AP Physics C, Unit 5, Torque and Rotational Dynamics. In this video, we're going to get into kinematics, torque, and rotational inertia. The first thing that we need to know about rotational kinematics is that there is a way to relate rotational and linear kinematics. So let's say that I have a little circle here, and it's rotating around this axis in the center, and we have a radius of r. So let's say that we are rotating in this direction here, and that we've rotated some theta, some angle right here. How do I relate how far that we've linearly traveled, right, this arc length distance right here, and how far we've traveled in the angular way, right? The equation for that is very simple, and it can be found in your reference sheet at this point. It's just theta is equal to x over r, where this little arc length here is equal to x. You'll also see a diagram on your reference table that looks very, very similar to this, but just uses s instead of x. Similarly, we're going to relate angular velocity and angular acceleration to linear velocity and linear acceleration. So we have omega is equal to v over r, and then we also have alpha is equal to a over r. And as you might guess, this is angular acceleration. We have here angular velocity, and then this is angular position. If we have a delta here, it becomes angular displacement. Again, similar to normal kinematics, we have three big equations that we can use if the platform or the rotational object is in constant acceleration, constant angular acceleration, and those are the same essentially. We just swap out our variables. So this is our first one here. This is our second one. And then our third one. And you'll notice these are all exactly the same as our big three kinematics equations. We've just replaced all of our x's with thetas, all of our v's with omegas, and all of our a's with alphas. A few important things to note about what I've just said. On any point on a rotating surface, right, if I rotate this entire surface some angle, right, every single point on this surface, on this circle, has traveled theta radians. Every single point has traveled the same theta radians, and every single point will also experience the same angular acceleration and the same angular velocity. What does not occur is that it experiences the same linear displacement or the same linear change of velocity, the same linear acceleration. Why is that? Well, if I'm a little bit closer, let's say I'm right here, this arc length here is obviously going to be a lot shorter than if I was at a larger r, travel the same theta, right? This arc length here is obviously a lot bigger. So you can see that our linear displacement is a lot larger when we're at a longer radius, when we're at a radius further from the center. All right, next up is our discussion of torque. Torque is pretty simple. It's defined by the Greek letter tau, and it's equal to r cross f, or rf sine theta. Now, how do I know what the theta is? How do I know what the r is? Well, let's say I have a little rod here, and this is my pivot point. Our r is essentially the distance between where the force is applied. So let's say the force is applied like this, and the angle is simply this little angle right here. So basically, torque is like the rotational version of force, right? We're just adding an r for our distance, and we're adding a little sine theta in there. Now we're going to talk about rotational inertia. Rotational inertia. So, rotational inertia measures a rigid system's resistance to changes in rotation. It's related to the mass of a system and the distribution of the mass relative to the axis of rotation. All right, next up on our list is rotational inertia. Rotational inertia. Rotational inertia measures a rigid system's resistance to changes in rotation. It's related to the mass of the system and the distribution of that mass relative to the axis of rotation. The equation that you might first see on your reference sheet to relate rotational inertia with which by the way has the sign I is equal to the sum of the mr squareds. Now, I mentioned earlier that the general form for I is going to be the sum of the mr squareds. But we also have some specific shapes that we kind of want to keep track of for what this coefficient here will be, right? We know that we have a collection of masses. We know that they're arranged a specific way, let's say like a cylinder or a rod. So there's going to be some multiple of mr squared that's attached to that. And we're going to do a quick derivation using integral calculus for a rod. However, you can look up some common rotational inertias, for example, for a hoop or for a mass that's attached at a further distance from the axis, whatever. For a sphere, anything, you can look those up, put them in your calculator or memorize them before the exam. You're going to find coefficients like a third or a half or a sixth or something like that. Just make sure you put them in your calculator. We're going to do this derivation just so you guys have an example though. So we have a rod right here, and our axis we're going to put right in the middle. Now we're trying to use these little DMs here, right? And we are going to have a total mass of just m. Before, we knew that I is the sum of the mr squareds. Now we're going to say that I is the integral of the r squareds with a little dm there, right? Now, we kind of briefly touched on this in a previous unit. But if we have this uniform density that we're assuming, this lambda, is equal to the sum of the m's over the sum of the l's, which is equal to dm dl, then we can take dl, m over l, is equal to dm, right? Just doing some simple algebra here. Using this information, what we can do is kind of plug this guy in here, right? So we have I is equal to r squared m over l dl. And I'm just going to change out our r here for an l, just because r is what you'll see in the reference table, but if you use l in a problem, if that's what's given, it doesn't really matter. I could have just changed this dl to dr. It would not have mattered either way. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to integrate this function. What are my bounds though? What am I integrating from? What am I doing? So I'm going to say that our total L, right, is just going to be this whole thing. That should be generally implied in the problem. But what I'm integrating this function from is I'm integrating it from negative of half of L, right? So I'm going to put negative L over 2. And then over here, I'm going to have positive L over 2. Positive L over 2. Now, we know from basic calculus that when we have this negative L over 2 and L over 2, what we can do pretty simply is just say that this is equal to 2 from 0 to L over 2, L squared, M over L, dL. Now, we also know that we can take out the constant here, so we have is equal to 2M over L from 0, L over to 0, from 0 to L over 2, L squared dL. This is a relatively simple integral, so we're going to get 2m L. We're going to get L cubed over 3 from 0 to L over 2. And then you could simply solve this integral. What we're going to get here is we're going to get ml over 12, ml squared over 12. And so we can see here the coefficient of our ml here is 1/12 for a rod when we're about the center. Now there's going to be a different coefficient if our axis was over here on the edge, right? Or if it was kind of like here in between. Because our mass is going to be a little bit differently distributed. It's not going to be equally from this thing. It's going to be, there's going to be a lot over here in this case, whatever. It's going to be a different coefficient. And that might be something that you could put in your calculator, but it's also something you could derive on the exam by simply just switching the bounds here and here. Now, the next thing that you might have noticed on your reference table, if you're following along using that, is that there's an equation under the integral equation for a rotational inertia that looks like this. I prime is equal to I COM plus MD squared. What does this mean? Well, this is known as the parallel axis theorem. And it states that if we want to find the I of some object, some system, whatever, along a different axis other than from the center of mass axis, we can just add this MD squared term to figure it out. So we're just going to do another quick example. And like I said, we're going to find another coefficient for a similar problem as what we just did. So we found from the previous thing that if we find I around the center of mass, right, it's going to be 1/12 ml squared, right? This is obviously the center of mass because it's a symmetrical object, right? We're just kind of in the center of both of these axes, right? But what if we want to find the new rotational inertia about this point P? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to add this term right here. So we have 1/12 ml squared plus m. And then what's our d? Our d is the distance from when we had the center of mass to our new point. So it's going to be L over 2 squared, right? And what is this equal to? Well, when we factor it out, when we simplify it, it's going to be equal to 1/3 ml squared. And that's just another example. We have a new coefficient because we moved the point P. And that's how we do rotational inertia. That's how we do the parallel axis theorem. But what if we have a non-uniform rod? What if we have a rod with non-uniform density? So in the previous problems, we had a rod that had a standard density of just lambda is equal to m over L is equal to dm over dl, right? What if we have a problem here where we have a rod with length L. We're trying to find rotational inertia about an axis that's over here. We have a mass of m. We have these little dm's as per usual, right? We're just adding up all these little dm's. And we're given that the lambda, that the density is equal to beta x cubed, right? And that this is still equal to that dm dl or dm dx or whatever you want to call it. The first thing that we need to figure out is what is beta, right? We need to figure out what beta is going to be because we can't just have a beta in the end answer. So let's try to find beta. So we know that dm dx, I'm going to call xl, right? Same thing. They both mean position. dm dx, and we're going to set that equal to beta x cubed. If we put this x over here, so we get dm is equal to beta x cubed dx, and then take the integral of each of these from 0 to m over here, and then 0 to our L over here, what I'm going to get is that m is equal to beta x to the 4th over 4, right? Simple integral. Therefore, 4m over x to the 4th is equal to beta. Or I should say, really, this is L to the 4th, right? The next step here is that once we know that lambda is equal to beta x cubed, which is equal to 4m over L to the 4th times x cubed, right? Because this is just our beta, this is our x cubed over here. We can now use that equation that we had before. So I is equal to the integral of x squared dm. And you'll notice I'm not using r squared, I'm just using x instead of r. That's pretty common. It's just a little bit easier, right? We know that dm dx is equal to 4m over L to the 4th x cubed. Therefore, dm is equal to 4m over L to the 4th times x cubed dx, right? And that's getting a little bit long here, but now we can take this and do a pretty simple substitution. So I is equal to 4m over L to the 4th, the integral of x to the 5th dx. So of course, once we integrate this, and obviously we're going to go from 0 to L here, we're going to get 4m over L to the 4th times L to the 6th over 6, which is essentially equal to 2/3 ml squared. And that is our answer. We're going to finish up this unit with some quick notes on Newton's laws in rotational form. So we can still write this sum of the torques equals 0 equations. We can still write sum of the torques equals whatever equations. That's something that we can do with forces, and it's something that we can do with torques too. Another thing is that if we have a constant angular velocity, it means that we have obviously no torque on the system. And the last thing is that you can still draw free body diagrams for torques. It just works the exact same way. And one final note as well that will be extremely useful for when you are solving problems. You should always use this in your reference table. the sum of the torques is equal to I alpha, is equal to the inertia times the angular acceleration of the system.